Welcome back to the All Hazards Prepper Show, your go-to spot for all your disaster prep information and how to survive wild SHTF scenarios. Plus, we'll chat about the chaos of the world, throw in weather updates, and cover any topics the All Hazards Prepper has in his head this week. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button on your favorite podcast platform and join us on social media. Now, let's welcome your fearless leader and the brains behind the All Hazards Prepper, Blake.
Hey everyone, the All Hazards Prepper back with you for an exciting episode. We got Morgan with Rouge Preparedness here today. Morgan is the founder and owner of Rouge Preparedness, which she founded in 2015 to share her journey of preparedness and helping others prepare for disasters and SHTF situations. She is the author of Family Preparedness 101 and How to Store Food and Water for Emergencies. Morgan and her family have lived off the grid in both Arizona and Alaska, along with traveling full-time in their RV. She focuses on her work on teaching others how to be more self-reliant and learning valuable skills that preppers need to know to survive. She has been featured on Women's Outdoor News, NRA Family, and Outdoor Hub. She has over 40,000 subscribers on her YouTube page and has a website that features preparedness and outdoor activity articles, along with a 7-day course on how to be a prepper. She is married with 2 daughters and another on the way, currently residing in Texas. Please welcome Morgan to the All Hazard Prepper Show. So glad to have you on, Morgan. This is take 2, by the way, everyone. For this week, we've had some issues with the podcast, but we are back at it. Welcome to technology. You always got to have a continuity plan there in place. So, Morgan, just tell us, tell our viewers a little bit more about yourself, how you became a prepper. When you might have became a prepper, and anything else you want to do as an introduction.
Sure. Well, thanks for having me. With all the technical issues, we got it worked out. Technology is never our best friend, but anyway. So yes, I am Morgan from Rouge Preparedness. Thank you very much for that great introduction. I got started a long time ago, even before I got really heavy into preparedness. There was a blackout situation, and I lived in Texas at the time. I still live in Texas now, but I lived in Texas at the time. This was a long, long time ago. And, I was like in my mid-20s, and the lights went out. I had never really experienced a lights out situation because I'm from Oregon, and we just don't have blackouts there. I don't know what the difference is. Feels like in Texas, when you breathe, the lights go out. So, my phone was about to die. And I was like, okay, well, I started thinking, I'm like, well, how would I charge my phone if the lights were go out? And even at that time, there were things you could, the external batteries and stuff, but they were kind of expensive and not as common as they are now. But, it wasn't until a few years later when I met my husband and we got really serious into preparedness. And it's just been, ever since, it's just been kind of like, I felt like this is like my calling, like to be prepared and how to show others how to be prepared and that kind of thing.
Perfect. Yeah, I think a lot of people have the similar story. It's one event that really sets it off. Something even small like a power outage, even if it's a couple hours, and next thing you know, they're a full-on prepper and they're researching and figuring out ways to prep for other events and things. So, perfect story there. And you kind of talked a little bit about this, but talk about maybe a time that your preparedness activities have really gave you the upper hand with dealing with an emergency or with a disaster or something. I know down there in Texas, and you always see a lot of things going on in the news with weather events and blackouts and even winter weather occasionally, depending on where you're at. So maybe just talk about a time that really your preparedness really helped you overcome that disaster or that event.
Yeah. I think just about everything can happen here in Texas. There's extreme heat, there's tornadoes, there's floods, there's hurricanes, there's pretty much almost everything you can think of besides like extreme blizzards, which, we had that cold, really the freezing, which Texas is not used to that. So it was an emergency for Texas. Things were freezing. I mean, they didn't have water. And so my most recent event, in which my preps actually came in handy was just 2-3 weeks ago, something like that. And huge storm outside, massive. I mean, constant thunder and lightning, huge gusts of wind, and the power went out. And it was like 11 o'clock at night. And I stayed up for about 4 or 5 hours just monitoring the situation, mainly because I was monitoring for my fridge and my freezer. I'm like, kind of, should I plug it in? Is it going to come back on? So after a couple hours, I brought out my generator and I plugged my fridge in. And I kept it plugged in for like an hour, and then I unplugged it. You don't have to keep the fridge plugged into your generator for forever. What I used to do when we lived off grid, when we had a smaller solar system, was with our freezer, we would have it on for like 4 hours at a time, then it'd be off for 4 hours and 4 hours for another time. Probably wasn't the greatest thing to do, because each time you do it, there's like a startup power and stuff like that. It's sucking a little bit more power than just having it on all the time. But in certain situations, it seemed to work. But even just getting it down to the cold, like plugging your fridge in, letting it get down to that cold temp again, and then unplugging it will at least help it stay cool inside for longer than just not doing it at all, kind of thing. But yeah, that was our most recent thing, where I used actually several generators. I have a few solar generators that we were using for various things.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, we live here in North Carolina. We see quite a bit of blackouts as well. I feel like even where I'm working now, you see more. I was actually talking with someone with a power company just a few months ago, and they said the grids we've here in North Carolina, and I'm sure in Texas too, that you see a lot more population growth. People are flocking to these states, and next thing you know, the grid's just not able to withstand the people that are on it, let alone all the EV and all the solar and everything, or all the use of batteries and stuff. So it's definitely important to be prepared nowadays. You talked a little bit there. You hinted that you did a little bit of off of grid living for a little while. What could someone learn from someone that's lived off the grid, someone that's lived in RV, from trying to be a prepper? What's some things that that you did during that time that someone might be able to do during a disaster or a shit hit the fan situation? What's something that someone can learn from the off the grid lifestyle?
Yeah, so living off the grid, I absolutely loved it. I want to go back to it one day. That's something we strive to do, but it's I will say living off grid is a lot more work in the sense of it's having to figure out your energy needs, and then it's having to actually, in some certain situations, off grid. Okay, let me restart. Off grid can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. So off grid, you'll see people in the comments when you see off grid reels, and they're saying, "Hey, I live off grid." And they're like, "You don't live off grid. You have, your cell phone, and you have all this stuff." Well, that's not exactly what we mean when we're talking about off grid. We're not talking about living in a cabin in the mountains and you never see another human being in your life. We're talking, when I talk about off grid, I'm talking about off of the electrical and usually water system, any type of utility system, even garbage. We didn't have garbage system. We didn't have anything. And so when you're off grid, there are going to obviously be certain challenges. But we just kind of learn to adapt to them. So, we didn't have a well at the time, so we hauled water. We had our solar system, which was great, and it supplied all of our energy needs. But there are certain things we obviously couldn't have. I couldn't run a dehydrator, but I learned to dehydrate food with the sun, with a solar dehydrator. And we built one and used it, and it was great. And, we couldn't, what's the other thing? Well, so we had a washer for washing clothes. Didn't have a dishwasher, couldn't do that. There's no way. And but we could only run our washer during peak sun times, at noon or something like that, very peak, because it was energy efficient, but you still have to think, well, it's still taking, from your batteries. Do you want to take it from your batteries, or do you want to take it from the peak excess sun? So it's just all these things that you have to think about with off grid. And you can definitely adapt, and we did, and I loved it. I love the off grid life. It's just, I think a lot of people just don't realize how much extra effort and work there is to living off grid, and the variable situations and things.
Sure.
But I love it.
Sure. Yeah, I think a lot of people don't realize we take for granted being able to turn on a light switch and there's power. Go turn the faucet, there's water and all that. And people, there's no longer anyone that I know that's alive that can go back to the times where those things weren't there. Let alone the internet and all that. So it's important for people to realize. I think learning from seeing people that live off the grid, and I have that same definition that off the grid is no utilities, not depending on really anybody but yourself. I really think people need to realize that there could be a time that we have to go back to that and have to be more self-reliant and know how to, even if it's not a shit hit the fan disaster or emergent or incident, if it's just a disaster that affects you for a week and you don't have water, you don't have power, and I think it's important not to rely so much on the government and think that the government's going to be there to help you. And I work in emergency management, so that's kind of my ordeal is helping people after disasters. But I'll be the first to tell you, FEMA's not going to be there within 3 days. It's going to be a little while, so you got to be self-reliant, especially in today's world where we're seeing more disasters, where we have more people that really the government or really anyone can help all at the same time. So it's definitely important to be self-reliant, and that's a great feature to have, a great thing to have. Talk about some, you talked about just a little bit there, but talk about some resources that you think every prepper should have from it's just someone that's basically starting out to someone that's a little more advanced. What are some things that people should have resource-wise, in their preps to handle, the disasters that they could face?
Yeah, so I think it's definitely going to vary from person to person and everything, but I think that there's definitely some things that you can start out with, basically on where you're going to start. So what are you going to do? Like, especially if you don't have, a huge budget and stuff like that. Like that's I think that's the biggest concern right now with a lot of people. It's like it's just so hard to get by, these days just to buy groceries. So, whether you have a huge budget or just, you have like an extra few dollars a month or whatever or a week to throw it at preparedness, these are just some things that you can get started with and try to focus on. Water is a really heavily underrated prep. It's something that like people will store a bunch of food and then they completely forget about water because it's heavy and it's bulky and it's big and and a lot of people have a very anti view on bottled water and these kinds of things. But water, you can sustain longer without eating than you can without water. So I think water is probably my number one thing that people should look into. If you're going shopping every week or every other week or whatever, you can get a gallon of water and just put it away and then rotate your water every once in a while. And it's the same with food. Food would be up next. So when you're getting those gallon or two of water, go ahead and get a few canned foods and the rice and the non-perishables and, while you're shopping. So if you normally get, a few cans of vegetables, we'll just get a few cans extra and then put them away. That's literally how easy it is. So, and then next, I think I've always been a big advocate for having a plan, an emergency disaster plan. And it's just such a boring thing to talk about because it's not exciting as like, yay, I get to go buy some food and like I physically see it. Like you can't physically see a disaster plan, right? You can't see it on the shelf. But putting the plan together, having that plan A and B, what are we going to do if we can't communicate by cell? What are we going to do if we do actually have a blackout? What are we going to do if we do have to evacuate from our home? What are we going to do if it is a long, blackout? How are we going to cook? All these things, these are plans that you're getting together with your household to figure out what you are going to do in these scenarios. And then, of course, these plans are not going to come to the exact fruition in which you planned them out, but it lays a groundwork for you to be able to adapt and overcome during these situations. But then the next thing I think is fitness. I'm not saying like you have to go run marathons or anything, but like we can help our mental and physical well-being. If we can't help ourselves, then it's really hard to help other people. So I think that's something that's pretty overlooked by preppers and in general. Skills are really big. If you don't have a budget, you can learn skills. Like you can go read a blog, you can go watch a YouTube, you can go get a book, and you can just start practicing skills. It's very, very easy. So, and then I think the last one would be first aid in medicine. This is also something a lot of people don't really think about until it's like really needed. I think like with most preps, but like getting over-the-counter medications and just getting like a couple first aid kits and throwing them in your car and having them in your home and things like that. It makes a difference. Like I have kids, and I think my most used prep is my first aid kit because they get bumps and bruises and scrapes. You know, they're outdoor kids. They're out and playing all the time, and I use Band-Aids every single day.
Oh, yeah, I saw
Literally
that.
every day.
Yeah, I saw that post. I think it was yesterday or the day before where you had the first aid kit out with the kids, and I was like, that. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think I've used my first aid kit. Because I have several. I have like a smaller one that's in the truck, and then I got this ginormous one that's more of a prepper's first aid kit. But
Mhm.
I don't know how many times I've used it over the last, even over the last year, and people, judge me and they're like, oh, why do you have that giant first aid kit? And I bring it out, and because they're in, they're having an issue or something, and or they fallen or something like that, and the next thing you know, it's okay. That makes sense of why you have that stuff. But it amazes me how many people don't even,
Yeah. Yeah,
have just a simple Band-Aid or something like that.
yeah,
Yes. Yep.
it's I'm most surprised at the first aid thing than I am at anything else because we all
Sure.
get, bumps and scrapes and bruises and whatever. I remember one prepper a while ago saying a Band-Aid's not going to solve your problems. I'm like, yeah, but it solves my kids' problems, and that's kind of all I care about.
Yeah,
And,
exactly.
it's like
Yeah.
I'm not here to stitch them up. I'm here to make them feel better. And if a
Yeah.
Band-Aid's going to make them feel better.
Yeah, you cover some great points there. I think the planning thing is big. As someone that's an emergency manager, that's one of my big things is in my career is planning for emergencies and hoping that they never get pulled and never get used. But it really gives you that baseline. Whenever we have a disaster that affects our organization that I work for or anything, or have a incident, I really don't go out and pull out that plan and say, okay, here's what we're doing. Really, that plan is to, so everyone kind of we've already been through the training, we've been through the exercises, we've already had those tough conversations that around that planning. So that's something that you need to do as a family too. Just have that plan, talk about it, have it written down, and then test and exercise it. And that way what to improve on and what to move forward with. And that's that's something big that I do with my career that you really translate prepping as well. And I feel there's so many people out there that don't even just have a conversation with their if you have kids in school and like who's going to go pick up the kids if we're getting out early because of a a weather event or whatever, or let alone something bigger. So just having those tough conversations now, it might be, morbid or not some fun to do, but it's really important to do those on the blue sky days rather than the gray sky days. So great points there,
Yeah.
Morgan. What are some big, in your opinion, you've been around in the prepping community for a little while. What are some of the biggest, challenges that preppers are facing today, from your point of view?
So I think there's a couple things. I think that there's information overload. And especially with new preppers, they don't really know what to do or where to start. And it kind of sucks because like when I first started, I literally just bought cans and I bought some rice and I didn't put them in Mylar bags. I didn't do anything. I just put them in a bin and I like shoved it away. And like they were fine and everything's okay. Obviously I learned better and whatever, but like people are just so afraid of doing something wrong. And I keep having to like say over and over, listen, it doesn't matter. Just get started. Just throw that stuff, just get it and put it there and let's get started somewhere. Because people, I literally just had somebody message me and say, I bought a first aid kit for the car, and I literally just put it in my closet and never went into my car. And she's like, I feel so stupid about it. And I was like, I can relate. Like, I've been there too. And it's just one of those things that's just, you just feel paralyzed sometimes because you just don't know, am I doing this right? Am I doing this wrong? What's going on? I think that's definitely one thing. But I think people just need to like take a breath and chill out and just do something. You're not going to get anywhere unless you just do something.
Yes, anything is better than nothing when it comes to prepping. I mean, if you can give yourself just a little bit of upper hand during that disaster or whatever you're facing, I think you're way better off than the average American. I working in, again, going back to the emergency management field, I've been a firefighter as well. It amazed me how little prepared people were. Even just like during a cold snap here in North Carolina, which is not something that doesn't have a whole lot, but it happens, quite a few, in a little bit in the winter. You would go and respond to people that didn't know how to cut off their water, and it's like, just know how to cut off your water, know how to do the basic things, because what if I can't get to you because we're in a winter storm or hurricane or something. So it just amazes me how little prepared people are for the smallest of things, and then they freak out whenever something does happen. It's like, and you come running to the government, or they come running to whoever, and it's like, well, we told you needed to have this stuff, that we're not going to be the ones to save you here all the time, and then have so much reliance on them. So that's definitely a great point there.
I think you touched on one of the biggest things that a lot of people kind of don't realize. Yes, we have fire stations. Yes, we have police. Yes, we have these things. But that not only can they not get to you, maybe they couldn't get to you in time, but they may not even have the manpower to get to you, period. And it's just this whole thing. And they also have families and stuff too that they're probably worried about and have to take care of. Like, it's a whole thing. When anybody goes to these emergency trainings, they know that, your safety is first. So like, if you cannot get to them safely, you're not doing it. And unfortunately, that's kind of the case. People are always going to try to go and save people. Of course, that's not what I'm saying, but I'm saying, the safety of the rescuer is almost as important as the person they are rescuing, because if the rescuer goes down, well,
we've added to the problem. That's what we call that in my world. We don't want to add to the problem. We want to solve the problem. So that's definitely a great point there, and I think that's something that we as someone that's in the prepper community, in the voicing what prepping is, I think I really like to hone in on, is that you don't always rely on what's there now. It might not be there. It might be slow to get there. We're seeing significant shortages in fire, EMS, and especially in law enforcement. So it might be a little bit longer if you call 911 for something. So if you can handle it yourself, it's way better off there. What's some habits that you kind of do on a daily basis or on a weekly basis as a prepper that really has helped you become a prepper? Really helped you and your family, prepare for disasters, or just prepare for the everyday, emergency or whatever. What are just some daily or weekly things that you do?
So, I'm at the point in my preparedness where I do a lot of maintaining, but I also do a lot of, I love practicing skills and learning new things. I mean, there's just so much more that we can learn. And I'm into my self-sufficient stage of like, all right, I got the prepping, the survival, bushcraft. Okay, great. I want to know more about self-reliance and how do I make do, out the grocery store, all these things. And so like, I'm trying, that's the stage that I'm in my prepping world. And I honestly think this all comes together. Like, if you're a prepper, I think that you should be a little bit of a survivalist. I think you should be a little bit of a bushcrafter. I think you should be a little bit of a off-grider and self-reliance person. I think you should be a little bit of all these things, because they all have skills that combine and help you be better prepared for any scenario, and train your mind and whatever to be ready for anything. But on a weekly basis, I like to just skills, any skills that I already know, or new skills. I am currently pregnant, so I'm not doing a whole lot of daily stuff, but I do a lot of maintaining of like our preps. So like I'll go over our inventory list and make sure that I have inventoried everything first of all, and that whatever needs to be inventoried is inventoried and things like that. Yeah, that's
Sure.
kind of where
Those
I'm
are
at right
great.
now.
Yeah, that I think that's a lot of what preppers and just everyday people need to know and do is just maintain what they have once you have it.
Yeah.
Go through and make sure nothing's expired, or I have an Excel sheet of everything, and then I have it
Mm-hmm.
marked on my bins, and it says, okay, this is when I bought it, and this is when it expires. So that way, all I have to do is look on the bin, and
Right.
I don't have to go and dig through everything. So that's some great things there. As a prepper, what is some things that you want to what's your bucket list items? What's some things that you want to do in the future, either buy or develop, or really hone in on as you're seeing more disasters in your area, or whatever you might be preparing for next.
So I know this is kind of like a kind of joke in the prepper community, but I kind of really want a bunker one day. Like it's like
don't we all? Yes.
it's like the dream, right?
Yes, it is the dream. I don't know how many times my wife has looked over and she in the middle, like I'm, she's scrolling through TikTok and I'm over there scrolling through how to build a bunker or how to buy, a prefab kit or something. And she goes, like,
Yeah.
what are we doing here? And I'm like, just dreams.
Listen,
Sorry. Yeah.
just let me have my
Yes,
dreams. Yeah.
exactly.
Um, it's funny because I actually, like bunkers this big joke, like the doomsday preppers, they basically made it into this big joke, but bunkers are super practical.
Yes.
Especially for areas that are have really a lot of tornadoes and things. They're really practical. Of course, like people that live in tornado torn places, they have, but I just think that it's definitely what I want one day.
Something we want more of. Yeah, I lived
Yeah.
out west for a little while in Wyoming, and they had there's people that had bunkers and things like that, and it was cool to see that, because in North Carolina, I mean, people just go to their basement or whatever. I don't know
Yeah.
of anyone personally that actually has a bunker, so it is would be definitely on the dream bucket list there. Kind of wrapping up here. What is one thing that you want to tell people about prepping that that you kind of focus on? What's your takeaway from prepping, and what's something you feel like everyone should know about prepping?
I just want people to realize that you are your own first responder with everything. With everything you do in life, if the lights go out, you must be responsible for what happens in your home. If you get that boo-boo, you are responsible, right? If just being situationally aware, of what's going on around you, that's you. You are responsible. No one, and I don't mean this to be harsh, but no one is out there looking out for you but you. That's it.
Yeah.
And, especially if you have children, a family, they're also your responsibilities. So I hope that it sinks into people that preparedness is simply about taking more responsibility for you and yourself when something happens, not even goes wrong, just something happens. It was unexpected in any way, shape, or form. And that you are empowered now to be able to at least handle it, either until you get further help, or to be able to just handle it altogether, depending on the situation. So that's
that is a great point there, Morgan. I think that really hones in on what prepping is. It's not something I tell people I'm a prepper, and they give me a weird look, and they think that I preparing for the apocalypse or whatever. Now, while I might be doing that, it's because you're the you're responsible for when something happens for you and those that depend on you as well. And you really have to, take ownership of that and have those plans, have those resources, have those items ready to be able to tackle, whatever disaster comes your way. If it's just the everyday little run of the mill, emergency or boo boo or whatever, let the larger disasters. So it's a great point there, Morgan. It was great talking with you today. Tell our viewers, where they can find you at. I know you're on social media. Now you got a website. Maybe talk a little bit just quickly about where we can our viewers can find you at.
Yes, I am on YouTube. I have a website, Instagram. If you just search Rogue Preparedness into your favorite search engine, I'll pop up there. So yeah, come and find me.
Perfect. So glad, grateful that we were able to have Morgan on today with Rogue Preparedness. A great conversation with her about prepping and everything that you need to know, even as a beginning prepper or been in the field for a little while. Super glad that you joined us here today on the All Hazard Prepper Show. Be sure to subscribe to wherever you're listening to this podcast and keep continuing to check out our social media pages and liking our pages as well. Everyone stay safe out there. The All Hazard Prepper out.